Welcome back. Lesson number 4 is epic events job description. So this is one person that's on the team there. They're on the task force, and their whole focus is making sure you've got awesome epic events. So there's a lot that goes into this. Now I know we've talked about this a couple different times, the idea of one, but executing one is different. So you've got the marketing side of things, you've got the content side of things, you've got the actual running of the event. So there's a number of things that are baked into making sure you have got a great epic event. So during the Inventing the Future meetings, that'll be starting pretty soon here, when considering the calendar for the next 12 months, set your dates for the 2 epic events that you want to host as a part of Project 13. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to introduce to you the Exponential blueprint for the whole year. There's one page for each year, you'll see. And there's a chance for each of you on the task force to fill in different important dates that pertain to your area. 2 of those dates are when do we want to have the epic events. And so let's talk about that first of all. When thinking about epic events, you want to do them in natural times of the year. So first of all, we talked before about how to find the footprint that's in your the number of 13-year-olds that are in your footprint. And so you find that number out, and you're figuring out, it might be just 13-year-olds, you might want to go for 12 to 14-year-olds, that kind of thing. But you're trying to figure out when's the best time in the rhythm of our town, our city, our country, the school systems, the other, for example, holidays, days off of school, things like this, that might be best to have an epic event. Some of you might be thinking, what about an epic event? We're in COVID. We're not even meeting. Well, you could do an epic event online. Well, what if you had 1,000 13-year-olds on Instagram or Facebook Live all at the same time, and you're giving something away to one of them that tuned in and that kind of thing, and you got all anyway. So it's not just meeting in person, but for example, let me just give you a couple of thoughts on when might be a natural time. Going back to school, in America, North America, it's in the fall. It's in September or August, depends. Kind of a back to school. Well, that's kind of a natural. Hey, we're all getting focused for school. Let's all come back. Try not to do an epic event when it's going to be difficult. If everybody's gone on family vacation, it's going to be hard to get a bunch of 13-year-olds in a room. You want to also think about, based on your footprint, how many do you want there? Like if you got 10,000 youth that are 13 in your footprint, would you want to try to get 500? Would you want to try to get 1,000? I mean, you decide, and you can break it up, and this is a part of the marketing plan. Okay, so if we want 1,000 there, and we know there's 1,000 because we did the census and we know how many schools and that kind of thing. How many buses do we need to have running? How many parents do we need to have filling their vans with young people? I mean, you can just do the math, right? How many invitations do we need to get sent out? Well, if we want 1,000 there, we need to at least invite 3,000, and they need to get hit 7 different times with some kind of invitation, whether that's personal or digital or Instagram or something like that, because we know that something about marketing, when people see it 7 different times, they go, oh yeah, I want to go to that or whatever. And then we need to make sure we have rides set up so you just reverse engineer it. Back to setting the dates. Do you want to do one at the end of school term? Maybe beginning of term, maybe the end of term. About ready to get out for summertime. A big event before everybody goes crazy and they're out everywhere for the summer. Maybe around holidays. Maybe right before Christmas, you want to do a big something, have an excuse for an event. Maybe around Valentine's Day, whatever. But make it kind of a natural time. And remember the event. When you're thinking about the content, it's geared to 13-year-olds because that's the sweetness. Now, you're not going to check people's ID on the way in. Oh, no, you can't come in, that kind of thing. But you're programming for 13-year-old. So what might be cool to a 16-year-old is different than a 13-year-old. You can skew a little bit higher because the 13-year-olds will go, oh, that's cool or whatever. But you're really speaking to their heart, to their felt needs, to issues that they're going through. They're the ones trying to find, who do I belong to? Who will I connect with? Who will accept me? And we want to be the ones with our arms open. That's the questions that they're answering all across the world. global youth culture that we have. They're all asking this question. And so depending on your location, you might want to go through 12 through 14 because it's easier to invite the whole middle school than just the 13-year-olds. I would encourage you, you've got to have a bigger than life reason to compel them to come. It's not like, oh, I'm doing the event, whatever. This has got to be, oh my gosh, this has never happened before in our city. You want to get TV stations involved, radio stations, like, guess what, we're doing this thing for 13-year-olds. We know 13-year-olds is this moment that, they're challenged with all these things and sexuality and blah, 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 and suicide. We want to be there, the problem solver in our community. Our church is not just the preacher, but we're the problem solver. We're helping bring solutions. And parents that don't know what to do with their 13-year-olds, we know what to do. Bring them to this event. It's going to be amazing. And by the way, we're going to give something away. And I would say part of what makes it bigger than life, oh yeah, we're going to have this band. It's going to be funny. We're going to have videos. We're going to have, cool interactive things. We're going to have small groups. We're going to have discussion. But we're also giving this great thing away. And whatever this thing is, I would encourage you to, someone's going to win an iPhone. Someone's going to get an iPad. Someone's going to get something really cool, PlayStation. Or someone's going to get, and I know some churches have done some things like this where someone's going to get a car, a free car, get a dealership, maybe that's in your church, somebody that owns a dealership, or in your neighborhood or in your city that sells you even a used car, even not a very good car. A car to a 13-year-old is a car, and you want them like shrieking, you gotta be kidding me. And then when you get there, have that car sitting right out in front of the auditorium, or maybe on the stage, or have it rolled in, or make a big deal about it, maybe have it sitting in front of the church for the last 4 weeks with a big, someone's gonna win, some 13-year-old's gonna win this car kind of a thing. Click with that, put it all over Instagram and everything, someone's gonna win this car, but you gotta be here in person. Of course, you don't give it away till the end of the night kind of a thing. And then just make it's bigger than life. Nothing like this has ever been done before. And so anyways, I just encourage you to think like that when you're putting this epic event together. You can use suggested themes that we put in other messages here in terms of felt needs. And I would encourage you, like if you're dealing with loneliness, don't say, hey, we're dealing with loneliness. More like, hey, we're going to talk about how to make great friends, make a theme like that, or friends for life, or if we say, we're going to talk about not having sex, don't say that. Just say, we're going to talk about sex. Careful about the sex thing because, parents might not want to bring their 13-year-old to that one. So, but make it a theme, bigger than life theme, bigger than life reason to come. Remember, a theme is a combination of the content you'll present and the marketing sizzle you need to get people to grab their attention. So we always did that with our big events. Like, we thought about what is we really want to impart into their life, but then how do we make that memorable when we're trying to invite people to come. And so it's sort of like tell them what they want, give them what they need kind of thing. So in the market, you tell them what they want. When they get there, you give them what they need. You're still being true to the marketing. Some of the other points to remember in organizing: use themed marketing graphics. Adjust the dates. You can give some of the themes that we suggested here if you want. Weekly digital buzz created for at least 2 months prior to the epic event. So you're asking all of your youth and maybe all of your church to say, hey, we're going to tweet this out, we're going to Instagram this, we're going to Facebook this, get a commitment. Then would you retweet it? Would you forward it on to all of your friends? Would you like it all? Okay, and comment on it. You might even do some homemade videos. Say, hey, would you tweet this out? Would you send this out? And so you might even get to a place where I would encourage you to do this as well, is text a graphic, an invitation graphic to all of your youth and say, hey, would you text this to all of your friends and send it out to all of your social media? It'd be great if you could get a texting group going as well as a social media group. Organize invitations. Make one of your graphic text like a graphic invitation. You might even want to print that so they can give it to people. We get so much digital stuff, they're not used to being given things. And these invitations you can also give to, for example, when you bring the whole church into the vision, say, listen, we're going to ask you to pray for 13-year-olds, but some of you, how many of you know a 13-year-old? raise your hand. Would you pray for them? Write their name down on something, pray for them, and then say, hey, here's an invitation. Would you give this to that 13-year-old that you know? And then follow up with them. So you're trying to get people, 1 month, at least 1 month for sure, but possibly even start with your youth 2 months in advance, giving little teasers. Something's coming, bigger than life. Tell them the theme. Don't tell them the details in a month in advance. You say, this is what it is, and bam, somebody's going to win this and that. And then you kind of do shock and awe with every few days. You got more digital things to release. Begin planning now. When the 13-year-old comes to the event, who's going to invite them. And so I would encourage you to get all of your youth, even all of your adults, write down the names of everybody you're going to invite, and you be praying over them, and then give us those names, because we want to know all together how many we physically inviting. We're retweeting to everybody, we're social media everybody, but we want to know how many people we're actually physically inviting. The youth in your church at every age, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, they should be looking for all 13-year-olds to invite. Hey, I got a cousin, I got a friend, or my friend has a little brother, and that kind of thing, right? And again, if they're older than 13, okay, you can still have them come, but you're really going after the 13-year-olds. It's sort of the bar mitzvah age, right? And so you want to have a way who's being to track who's being prayed for, who's being picked up. Ultimately, you want to track how many adults have signed up to be a shuttle car. I'm going to pick up 5 13-year-olds. I'm going to pick up 10 13-year-olds because they got a minivan or whatever, a couple cars. Maybe you have 16, 17, 18-year-olds. They'll sign up to be a shuttle car, pick up a bunch of 13-year-olds. And so you want to figure out how many seats do you have that can get enough people here, right? If you got to get a bus or use a church bus or a school bus, find out how you need to do that. So there's a whole bunch of other things here that you can look at if this is your if this is your area of expertise, as far as you're going to be the task force member that runs the event, that leads the event, preparing for the actual content of the event. As I've mentioned, I've done hundreds of these events. What's the worship going to be like? The interactivity, the small group, the message, who's putting that together? It ought to be pastor, youth pastor, somebody else, and the creative tools we're going to use for that. PowerPoint, video clips, speaking, carefully planned altar ministry times, form the small groups right then, dismiss them to a side room. Be sure that you dismiss everybody for the next small group meeting. If you can't meet, set a Zoom meeting. And set rehearsal times at least 3 weeks in advance, so everything's perfectly rehearsed. Rehearse several different times in advance. And so one thing that I just want to say before we get off that topic is this leads to kind of a broader discussion that you guys are going to need to have, and maybe between now and the next video clip you can discuss this. And that is, up to this point, you've been meeting with your main church service, that's your track, and your youth group service on that track, the main track. Now we're developing this other track. As you get ready for your public phase, we'll talk about that, that's the first epic event. After that event, I'm encouraging you, something needs to change. That is, you don't want to go back to having a Wednesday night youth group and 25 people come. You just had 500 people come, and maybe 100 of them gave their life to the Lord. You just had 1,000 people come, and 500 gave their life to the Lord. And now you've got small groups and stuff. Like you just have something epic. When they come back, they want to see something epic. And I would encourage you to think about this now. After the first epic event, you need to think about where and when do we do our next event, on our weekly event. Because up to this point, you've been on the first track, right? Weekly youth group meeting, weekly youth group meeting. Now, you've raised the whole standard of what an event is all about. You've got them into small groups, that's great, but we have an epic event every single week. And it may not be on this level, we're not giving a car away every week, but it's really awesome. It might be, for example, a Friday night event. It might be a Saturday night event where it's basically your weekly, it's church for young people, right? It's not youth group anymore, it's church for young people. And I would encourage you, or it might be on Sunday morning where you do church for young people at 9 o'clock and church for adults at 11 o'clock, whatever. I'm just saying you can actually give the same message. Pastor, I encourage you to speak to them as much as you speak to your adults. And it's like adding a service to your weekend time. Now, churches have done this. Pastor Mazzola, you may have heard me talk about him before. He's got the largest Protestant church in Moscow, 17 campuses, but he moved his weekly youth group from a Wednesday night to a Friday night and then to a weekend service. He felt like by doing that, he dignified the youth. They get a real service in the main auditorium, and he preaches at all the services on a weekend. There's 2 for youth, 3 for adults. He preaches all 5 services. Any guest speakers, they speak to all 5. He's the pastor of the whole church. And so I would just encourage you to think about and discuss, when do you want that meeting to move and what do you want it to turn into? I would encourage you, Pastor, when you're thinking about your service, you can preach the same sermon that you preach to the adults that week. Just have a little different worship, have the young worship team lead the worship, and then throw a couple different illustrations in there. Wear some cool clothes. You can change to old people clothes for the adults if you want. But the point is, you're their pastor, and you don't have to be cool. None of these exponential pastors are cool and young and tattoos and all that kind of stuff. Be yourself. And just throw a couple of illustrations in there. And if you don't know any, ask a 13 or a 15-year-old. Hey, listen, I'm preaching on this in 2 weeks. I'm trying to make this point. Do you have any good ideas? And just ask them for illustration boards. They'll give you. Ask some of your small group leaders that you're in training. The leadership guys that are in training. So, anyways, I just want to encourage you to start thinking about now. After the epic event, I would encourage you the very next week. Maybe you have a funeral service for the old youth group meeting, and you say, from now on, we're a part of the church, and we are meeting in the church building, and we're growing just like we expect them to act like adults, and they will become that. And they're probably going to be doing more growing and training than most of the adults are anyways. And I think it'll make them feel encouraged. But Pastor Mazzola said it also sent a message to the adults, and the adults, their message is, wow, the pastor thinks these youth are so important they get their own weekend service. So they esteemed what's happening with reaching the next generation at a whole different level. Okay, thanks. We'll see you next lesson.